Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling the big one. And when I say big, I don't mean, is a hot dog a sandwich? Big. I mean the fundamental question that sits at the bedrock of pretty much every other thought we have.
It frames reality. It really does. It's the lens through which you see everything else.
The question is simply, is there a God? But before you roll your eyes and think, okay, I've heard the debates, I've seen the YouTube comment sections, I know how this goes, hold on.
Yeah, pause for a second.
Because the mission today is different.
We aren't just looking to catalog a list of intellectual proofs so you can, win an argument on Twitter.
Right.
Although, frankly, the material we have today is robust enough for that if you really wanted to go there.
But we want to go a step further. We want to see how these proofs, these logical, philosophical, and scientific arguments actually bridge the gap.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get from a cold, abstract, philosophical concept to a personal reality? Specifically, how does knowing this stuff actually deepen your love for Christ?
That's the key. How does it inspire devoted living? Because if this is just about logic, it stays in the head.
It's trivia.
It becomes trivia. Exactly. We want to see how it moves to the heart. It's about seeing the face of God through the lens of reason and reality.
So let's set the stage a little bit. If you rewind the clock a few decades, the cultural vibe on this topic was, well, it was pretty bleak for theists.
Bleak is putting it mildly. You look at the history of the 20th century, and there was this overwhelming narrative that God was essentially retired.
The Time magazine narrative.
Precisely. April 8, 1966. Time magazine runs a cover that became, iconic.
Oh, yeah.
Just a black background with these stark blood red letters. Is God dead?
And it wasn't really a question, was it? It felt more like a statement, a declaration.
It was. It was reflecting a movement, and oddly enough, it was among theologians and philosophers who felt that in the secular scientific age, the concept of a personal God was just obsolete.
A cultural funeral.
It was a cultural funeral. But then you fast forward to 1980, Time runs another cover.
Modernizing the case for God.
And the article inside talks about a quiet revolution. And here's the kicker. This revolution wasn't happening in churches. It was happening in philosophy departments.
Philosophy departments. That's usually where you expect faith to go to die.
That's the stereotype, right?
You send your kid to Philosophy 101 and they come back wearing a beret and quoting Nietzsche.
Exactly. But the article noted that God was making a comeback in the crisp intellectual circles of academic philosophy. By 2001, you have prominent atheist philosophers lamenting the desecularization of academia.
Whoa.
One estimate suggests that perhaps a quarter to a third of philosophy professors are now theists.
That is a massive shift. I mean, we're talking about a field that was dominated by positivism and, naturalism.
And obviously, post 9/11, we saw the rise of the new atheism, Dawkins, Harris, Dennett, Hitchens. They were very aggressive, very loud, very commercially successful.
The God delusion era, I remember that vividly. It felt like if you believed in God, you were somehow mentally deficient.
That was the marketing. That was the whole brand. But what we're seeing in the actual academic literature, the peer-reviewed journals, the high-level debates, is that belief is no longer considered intellectual suicide. Not at all. In fact, it's a mighty struggle for the mind and soul right now. The arguments for God are stronger, more refined, and more scientifically grounded than they have been in centuries.
So if we're going to dive into this struggle, we need to define our approach. Because a lot of people, skeptics especially, they'll say, well, you can't prove God exists.
Right.
And usually what they mean is you can't prove it like you prove water boils at 100 degrees Celsius.
We need to clarify what we mean by prove. We aren't putting God in a test tube.
I love the analogy I read in the prep for this. Trying to prove God with the scientific method is like trying to measure radioactivity with a telephone.
That captures it perfectly. Think about what a telephone is. It's a device engineered to transmit sound waves converted into electrical signals. It is not built to detect alpha or beta particles. So if you hold a phone up to a chunk of uranium and hear nothing,
that doesn't mean there's no radiation.
It means you're using the wrong instrument.
So the scientific method is the phone.
The scientific method is designed for the natural world. It deals with things that are repeatable, measurable, and material. God, by definition, is not material.
He's supernatural.
He is the creator of the material. He isn't a part of the universe. He is the author of it. You can't use the instrument to measure the maker of the instrument.
So we aren't looking for a chemical reaction here. We're looking for what lawyers or historians would call a cumulative case.
I like to think of it like a code of chainmail.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why chainmail? Why not just a chain.
Because a chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
Mm-hmm.
If I give you 5 arguments for God and you find a flaw in one of them,
Snap.
the chain breaks and the conclusion falls. But a cumulative case is like chainmail. It's interwoven.
So if a skeptic pokes a hole in one argument, the armor still holds.
Exactly. The arguments reinforce one another. We have the cosmological argument telling us there's a cause, the teleological argument telling us the cause is intelligent, the moral argument telling us the cause is good.
They conspire together.
They conspire together to make God's existence not just possible, but the most probable explanation for reality as we know it.
I like that. It's not about finding one gotcha proof that solves everything in a sentence. It's about the weight of the evidence.
Right.
So let's start with the big one, the cosmological deep dive, which is basically a fancy way of saying, how did we get here?
And specifically, the universe had a beginning. This takes us to the Leibnizian argument, named after Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz.
The guy who invented calculus independently of Newton.
The very same, an absolute genius. And he asks the question that I think keeps everyone awake at least once in their life, usually at 3 in the morning.
Why is there something rather than nothing?
It's the ultimate question. Why does anything exist? Leibniz formulated the principle of sufficient reason. It sounds technical, but it's actually really intuitive. It states that everything that exists has an explanation for its existence.
Okay.
Now, that explanation can be one of 2 things. Either it was caused by something else,
Like a chair is caused by a carpenter?
or it exists by the necessity of its own nature.
Meaning it has to exist. It couldn't not exist.
Right. Like numbers. The number 7 didn't pop into existence one day. It exists necessarily. So when we look at the universe, we have to ask, is it necessary? Did it have to exist? Or does it have an external cause?
There's a great analogy here, the ball in the woods.
Yeah, this really clarifies it. Imagine you're hiking through a dense forest. You've never been there before. And you stumble across a translucent ball about the size of a basketball just lying on the forest floor.
Okay. A glowing orb in the woods. Weird.
Now, would you assume that ball just appeared? That it just popped into existence out of nothing without any explanation?
No way. I'd assume someone dropped it, or it fell from a plane, or it's some weird natural formation I've never seen before. It has a cause.
You naturally assume there's an explanation for its existence. You don't just say, oh, well, it's just there. Brute fact. Now, suppose you make the ball bigger. Suppose it's the size of a car.
Still needs an explanation. In fact, maybe more of one.
Size of a house. Size of a continent.
Still needs a cause. You can't get out of it.
Now expand that ball until it is the size of the entire universe. Just because the ball is huge doesn't remove the need for an explanation.
That's a powerful image. But let me play devil's advocate here. Atheists usually say the universe is just a brute fact. It just is. Bertrand Russell famously said the universe is just there and that's all. Why isn't that a valid answer?
Because it's an intellectual cop-out. It just shuts down inquiry. If you accept that the universe just popped into existence uncaused, you are abandoning the very basis of science. Science is the search for causes. If the entire universe can happen without a cause, why can't a tiger just pop into existence in this studio right now?
I'd prefer if it didn't.
But why doesn't it?
Sure.
Because we believe that out of nothing, nothing comes. Ex nihilo nihil fit. To say the universe is a brute fact is to believe in magic. Worse than magic, actually.
How so?
Magic requires a magician. This requires nothing at all.
So if the universe has an explanation, and the universe includes all of space, time, and matter, then the explanation cannot be made of space, time, or matter.
You're following the logic perfectly.
Yeah.
The cause must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. It must be uncaused, because we can't have an infinite regress of causes, and it must be unimaginably powerful to create the cosmos out of nothing.
Spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful. That is starting to sound a lot like a traditional definition of God.
It points directly toward an unembodied mind, a consciousness that exists outside of physics.
Okay, let's drill down deeper. We can get more specific than just something exists. We have the Kalam cosmological argument. This one is ancient, right?
It was refined by medieval Islamic theologians, hence Kalam, but it's been championed recently by philosophers like William Lane Craig. It's deceptively simple.
Okay.
Premise 1. Whatever begins to exist has a cause.
Seems pretty bulletproof. Things don't just appear.
Premise 2. The universe began to exist.
And that's the controversial one.
That's where the fight is,
Yeah.
which leads to the conclusion. Therefore, The universe has a cause.
So premise 2, the universe began to exist. For a long time, atheists and materialists preferred the idea of an eternal universe, the steady state theory.
Right. If the universe has always been here, you don't need a creator. It just is.
But we have evidence that it did begin, both philosophical and scientific. Let's look at the philosophical proof first, because
Yeah.
this one breaks my brain a little bit. The problem with infinity.
This is a brain bender, but stick with me. The argument is that you cannot have an actual infinite number of past events.
I mean, in math class, you can have infinity. You can have infinite numbers between 0 and 1.
In abstract math, yes,
Right.
that's a concept, a potential infinite. But in the real physical world, the argument is you cannot have an actual infinite collection of things.
Okay.
To explain this, we use the famous paradox known as Hilbert's hotel.
All right. Lay it on me.
Imagine a hotel with infinite rooms. Room 1, room 2, room 3, going on forever. And every single room is occupied. There is no vacancy.
Infinite rooms, all full. Got it.
Now, a new guest shows up at the front desk. The manager says, no problem. He moves the guest in room 1 to room 2. He moves the guest in room 2 to room 3. He moves every guest from room N to room N plus 1.
So room 1 becomes empty.
Yes. And the new guest checks in.
Yeah.
But think about what just happened. You had a fully occupied hotel.
And you just added someone.
You just added a person without building any new rooms. It's already absurd.
That doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction.
It gets worse. Suppose an infinite number of new guests show up. A
Ooh.
whole infinite busload.
Okay, now it's impossible.
The manager says, easy. He moves the guest in room 1 to room 2, guest in room 2 to room 4, guest in room 3 to room 6. He moves everyone to double their current room number.
So now all the odd-numbered rooms are empty.
And you have infinite odd numbers. So you just emptied half the hotel, yet you didn't kick anyone out. You just fit an infinite number of people into a completely full hotel.
That is absurd. In the real world, that's just impossible.
Exactly. It shows that an actual infinite leads to logical contradictions in reality. Now apply that to time. If the past were infinite, if there were an infinite number of seconds before today, we would never have reached today.
Because you can't traverse an infinite distance. You can't count to infinity.
Right, it's like trying to jump out of a bottomless pit. You can never finish counting down from infinity to zero. So the past must be finite. Time must have had a beginning.
So philosophically, an eternal universe seems impossible. But science backs this up too, right? We aren't just doing word games here.
Oh, big time. We have the second law of thermodynamics. This is the law of entropy. It states that in a closed system, things tend toward disorder. Energy spreads out.
It's like a cup of coffee. If you leave it on the desk, it doesn't get hotter, it gets cold.
It reaches equilibrium with a room. The universe is the same. It is running out of usable energy. It's heading toward what scientists call heat death, a state where everything is cold, dark, and dead.
So if the universe had existed forever...
It would have suffered heat death an eternity ago. We wouldn't be here. The suns would have burned out. The fact that the universe is still hot, that stars are burning, and we have usable energy means that the battery was wound up a finite time ago.
It hasn't been running forever.
It can't have been.
And then there's the Big Bang itself.
Which was a huge shock to the scientific community, by the way. Most scientists wanted an eternal universe.
Right.
Then Edwin Hubble discovered the universe is expanding. Then Penzias and Wilson discovered the cosmic microwave background radiation, basically the afterglow of the initial explosion.
That was the pigeon poop story, right?
Doc chuckles. Yes. They were using this massive antenna and kept getting this static hiss from every direction. They thought it was pigeon droppings on the equipment, messing with the signal.
So they cleaned it.
They scrubbed it, but the hiss remained. It turned out to be the radiation left over from the moment of creation itself.
So all the scientific data points back to a single point of origin, a singularity where all space and all time came into being.
And this leads to that incredible moment mentioned by Robert Jastrow. He was the founder of NASA's Institute for Space Studies, an agnostic, essentially. He wrote that for the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream.
I have the quote here. It's so good.
That's perfect.
He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries.
It's a moment of utter humility for materialist science. The Bible started with, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Science spent 2,000 years trying to prove the universe was eternal, only to finally catch up and say, oh, you were right.
So let's pause and pivot. What does all of this mean for us, for the listener trying to deepen their faith? Because knowing about the Big Bang doesn't necessarily make me want to, pray more.
It changes how you view God. This argument gives us the first cause. We realize God is uncaused, beginningless, changeless, immaterial, timeless, spaceless.
It stops us from thinking of God as just a Superman somewhere up in the clouds.
Precisely. Aquinas called this the necessary being. This is the ground of all existence. It removes God from being just another object in the universe, like a planet or a star or a ghost, and places him as the foundation of reality itself.
That's a huge shift.
It is. When you pray, you aren't praying to a finite being. You are connecting with the source of your very existence. That creates a sense of majesty. It creates awe.
It really does. It makes you realize how small we are and how big he is. But let's move to the next layer of the chainmail. Because a first cause could theoretically be impersonal. It could just be a blind force, like electricity or gravity.
Right. A force can cause things, but it doesn't plan things. It doesn't design. That's where the teleological argument comes in, the argument from design.
This is where it gets really interesting for me, the fine-tuning of the universe.
We often hear about the Big Bang as an explosion, which sounds chaotic, like a grenade going off.
Yeah, random.
But the physics tell a different story. The initial conditions of the Big Bang were fine-tuned for life with a precision that is literally incomprehensible.
We're talking about the fundamental constants and quantities of physics, gravity, the cosmological constant, the mass of protons and electrons.
Correct. Imagine a giant control panel for the universe. There are dozens of dials. One dial is set to the force of gravity, another is the weak nuclear force, another is the expansion rate of the universe.
And these dials have to be set exactly right.
The margin for error is razor thin. It's beyond razor thin. If you change the force of gravity by just a hair's breadth, make it slightly stronger, the universe collapses into a fireball immediately after the Big Bang.
A big crunch.
A big crunch. Make it slightly weaker. The universe expands so fast that stars and galaxies can never form. It just becomes coal dust.
So it's either a crunch or a void.
And that's just one setting. The sheer number of variables that have to be exactly right is staggering. The analogy often used is a lottery. Imagine a lottery with billions upon billions of black balls and one single white ball.
Okay.
It's not just that picking any ball is improbable. It's that the specific ball you need, the life-permitting ball, is overwhelmingly improbable against the backdrop of a life-prohibiting universe.
The universe wants to be dead.
That's a great way to put it. Life is a delicate, fragile exception that requires everything to be rigged in its favor.
Roger Penrose, the physicist, he calculated the odds of the universe starting with this low entropy, right?
He did. The number is 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123.
That's a number I can't even picture.
You can't. That number is so big that if you tried to write it out by putting a 0 on every single particle in the known universe, you wouldn't even make a dent in writing the number. It is, for all intents and purposes, zero chance.
But hold on, skeptics have a workaround for this. The many worlds hypothesis. The multiverse.
Right. They look at the math and say, this is too suspicious, it looks rigged. So to avoid God, they suggest that maybe there are an infinite number of universes.
The idea being that if you have enough lottery tickets, eventually one of them has to win.
Exactly. If there are 10 to the 500th power universes, then purely by chance, one of them is bound to have the right conditions, and we just happen to be in that one. Problem solved.
Is that valid? Or is it a sci-fi cop-out?
Well, it struggles with Occam's razor. That's the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the best.
Right.
So to explain the design of one observable universe, they are postulating an infinite number of unobservable, unverifiable universes.
It feels like metaphysical bloating.
It is. It's a massive assumption just to avoid saying God did it. And even then, you need a mechanism to generate those universes, a universe generator, which itself would likely need fine-tuning.
You just push the problem back a step.
Just push it back.
The data also mentions the monkey in a print shop analogy.
Oh, yeah. The idea that if you give a monkey a typewriter and enough time, he'll eventually type out Shakespeare.
People actually believe that.
It's mathematically flawed. The unlikelihood of random chance producing even a simple sentence is astonishing. But when you get to biological complexity, the numbers just explode.
Which brings us to the watchmaker argument.
William Paley. A classic 18th century argument. If you're walking across a heath and you find a stone, you might assume it's always been there. Natural forces could produce a stone.
Sure.
But if you find a watch,
You see the gears, the springs, the glass, the hands. You know immediately that rain and wind didn't make that. Someone made it. A watchmaker.
It implies contrivance, parts framed for a purpose. And Paley argued that the biological world is infinitely more complex than a watch.
Darwin tried to counter this, obviously, with natural selection, but even he struggled with it.
He did. The eye. In The Origin of Species, Darwin freely confessed that to suppose the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances, could have been formed by natural selection seems, he wrote, absurd in the highest degree.
He believed it did, but he admitted it felt absurd. And today we know so much more about the cell than Darwin did. Darwin thought the cell was just a blob of protoplasm, like jelly.
We know now it's a factory, a microscopic city. It has turbines, storage mechanisms, encoded information in DNA. Sir Fred Hoyle, the astronomer, had this great analogy about the Rubik's Cube.
I love this one.
Imagine a blindfolded man trying to solve a Rubik's Cube just by randomly twisting it.
It would take forever, literally.
Hoyle calculated it would take about 1.35 trillion years on average. And that's just for a simple plastic cube. Hoyle calculated that the chance of forming a single functional protein, just one chain of amino acids, by chance, is mathematically more difficult than that blindfolded man solving the cube.
And a living cell has how many proteins?
Thousands. Hoyle also used the junkyard tornado analogy.
Right.
He said the probability of life assembling by chance is like a tornado sweeping through a junkyard and accidentally assembling a fully functional Boeing 747 ready for takeoff.
That puts it in perspective. It's not just unlikely, it's statistically impossible.
Utterly impossible.
And it's not just biology, it's the environment too. I mean, look at water.
Water's miraculous. We take it completely for granted, but it has a high specific heat. It keeps our body temperature stable so we don't boil over or freeze instantly.
Yeah.
A universal solvent. It carries nutrients in our blood.
And the freezing thing, that's the one that gets me.
Right. Almost every other liquid contracts when it freezes. It gets denser. If water did that, ice would sink. The oceans would freeze from the bottom up. All marine life would die. The planet would become a solid ice block.
But water expands when it freezes.
It forms a lattice structure. It gets less dense, so ice floats. It forms an insulating layer on top of the water, protecting the life below. That isn't just a happy accident. That is engineering. That is design.
So when we pivot to devotion here, how does the teleological argument change our walk with Christ? How does this make us love him more?
It moves us from the power of the cosmological argument to the mind of the teleological. We aren't just worshiping an abstract force. We are worshiping an architect, an artist.
Albert Einstein felt this, right? He wasn't a believer in a personal God, but he saw this.
He did. He spoke of a humble admiration of the illimitable superior spirit. He saw the intelligence woven into the fabric of reality.
So for the Christian?
For the Christian, this means when you look at a sunset or a leaf or the complexity of your own hand, you are seeing the deliberate handiwork of a God who cares about detail, about beauty, about function. It inspires gratitude.
It validates that feeling of purpose. We aren't accidents.
You aren't a piece of cosmic dust that got lucky. You were intended.
Okay, so we have a powerful cause and an intelligent designer. But is he good? That's the scary question.
It is.
Because a powerful, intelligent being could be evil or just indifferent. A cosmic scientist running an experiment.
That brings us to the moral deep dive. And honestly, this is often the most persuasive argument for people because we feel it every single day.
The moral argument. It goes. Premise 1, if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Premise 2, objective moral values and duties do exist. Conclusion. Therefore, God exists.
Now, I can hear the brakes screeching for some listeners on premise 1. If God does not exist, objective morals do not exist.
Yeah, that sounds insulting. People say, hey, I can be good without God. I don't need a Bible to tell me not to murder someone.
And that is absolutely true. You can act morally without believing in God. You can be a virtuous atheist. But that's not the argument.
Okay.
The argument isn't about knowing what is good. It's about the basis of goodness. Without God, what is morality? Where does it come from?
Well, on a purely atheistic evolutionary view, isn't morality just a biological adaptation?
Yeah.
A social convention?
Exactly. It's the herd morality problem. If we're just animals advanced primates, then our morality is just instinct. We developed altruism because it helped the tribe survive.
These defend the hive.
These defend the hive. Humans defend the tribe. So rape, murder, or charity. They aren't good or evil in a cosmic sense. They are just behaviors that either helped or hindered our survival.
Right. If you rewind the evolutionary type, maybe we could have evolved like sharks, where the strong forcibly eat the weak.
And in that world, might makes right would be the moral standard.
Mhm.
If there is no God, morality is just a preference. It's like liking vanilla over chocolate. You prefer kindness, I prefer cruelty. Who is to say who is right?
That's a terrifying thought. But premise 2 says objective moral values and duties do
And
exist.
deep down, we all know this. We act like it's true every day. We don't just feel that child abuse is socially unacceptable or bad for the species.
No.
We perceive it as a moral abomination. It's intrinsically evil.
It is objectively wrong.
Think about the Nazis. If the Nazis had won World War II and brainwashed the entire world to believe that exterminating Jews was good, would it actually be good?
No, of course not. It would still be wrong even if every single person on Earth agreed it was right.
Exactly. That means the standard of right and wrong exists outside of human opinion. It's objective. It is real.
So if objective morals exist, and they do, then God must exist as the anchor for those morals, the standard.
Correct. You need a transcendent lawgiver. But there is a classic objection here, the Euthyphro dilemma. It dates back to Plato.
I remember this one. It's a trap, right? Is something good because God wills it, or does God will it because it is good?
Right. The skeptic tries to trap you. If you say it's good because God wills it, then morality is arbitrary. God could have willed that hating your neighbor is good, and we'd have to do it.
That seems wrong. God wouldn't command us to rape. That's incoherent.
But if you take the other horn, if you say God wills it because it is good, then good is something outside of God. It's a standard higher than God that he has to obey.
So he's not supreme. He's just a cosmic middleman.
Right. So how do we get out of the trap?
Yeah, how?
We split the horns of the dilemma. It's a false choice. The solution is that God's nature is the good. God doesn't consult a rule book, and he doesn't just flip a coin. Goodness is his essential character.
So when he commands us to love, he isn't making up a rule. He's revealing who he is.
Exactly. God is compassionate, fair, loving. His commands are reflections of that nature. This connects to what Ecclesiastes 3.1 says. He has set eternity in our hearts. Pascal called it the God-shaped vacuum.
We have this universal belief in right and wrong across all cultures, even in young children. It implies a moral lawgiver.
And for devotion, this is huge. This argument reveals God as good.
It's not just that he's powerful from the cosmological argument or smart from the teleological. He actually cares about justice and love.
It validates our conscience. When you feel that tug to do the right thing, that is an echo of the divine nature. It bridges the gap to a personal God. We are dealing with a cold force like gravity. We are dealing with a being who loves righteousness and hates iniquity.
Which sets us up perfectly for the final pivot, moving from proof to person. Because you can believe in a good, powerful, intelligent creator and still keep him at arm's length.
You can be a deist, someone who thinks God wound up the clock and then just walked away.
Right.
But the Christian claim is that God has penetrated the finite. He's
Okay.
communicated.
We often have these misconceptions of God as a celestial killjoy on one hand or a fuzzy grandfather in the sky on the other.
Those are caricatures. But the reality is about communication. How does the infinite communicate with the finite? The anthill analogy is great for this.
I like this one. If you want to communicate with a colony of ants, say, to warn them that a lawnmower is coming, how do you do it?
You can't shout at them. They don't understand English. You can't write them a letter.
So what do you do?
The only truly effective way to communicate with an ant is to become an ant. To get down on their level, speak their language, and lead them.
And this is the incarnation.
Hebrews 1 verses 1 and 2 says it perfectly. In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son. The philosophical infinite penetrated the finite.
This is where the rubber meets the road. The proofs we've talked about, cosmological, teleological, moral, those are all clues.
They are the fingerprints left at the scene.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus Christ is the face. The proofs tell us that someone is there. Christ tells us who is there.
Before we get to the final takeaway, I want to touch on one more argument, the ontological argument. This one is notoriously difficult.
It is abstract. It's pure logic. No telescopes or microscopes needed.
Anselm and then, more recently, Alvin Plantinga are the heavy hitters here.
Right. The core idea is this. God is defined as a maximally great being, a being than which no greater can be conceived.
Okay, the greatest possible being you can imagine.
Now, Alvin Plantinga's version argues this. If it is even possible that a maximally great being exists, then he must exist in all possible worlds, including our own.
Unpack that. Why? That sounds like a magic trick.
Mm.
It's possible, therefore it's real.
Think about what makes a being great. Is it greater to exist only in someone's imagination or to exist in reality?
To exist in reality is obviously greater. A real $1 million is way better than an imaginary $1 million.
Right. So if a being is maximally great, it must have the property of necessary existence. It can't just happen to exist. It must exist by necessity. If it only existed in some possible worlds but not others, it wouldn't be maximally great because a being that existed in all worlds would be greater.
So if it's even possible for him to exist, he has to exist everywhere by definition.
Exactly. The only way to defeat this argument is to say that the concept of God is logically incoherent, like a married bachelor or a square circle.
Yeah.
But if the concept of God is coherent, then his existence is necessary.
Why does this matter for devotion? It feels like word games to a lot of people.
It matters because it defines who we are worshiping. We are worshiping a being of maximal excellence, omniscient, omnipotent, and morally perfect.
We aren't settling for a demigod like Zeus or Thor with all their flaws.
No. We are surrendering to the absolute peak of perfection. It demands total surrender and worship.
But proofs can only take you so far. We have to end with the existential proof. Changed lives.
This is the shift from philosophy to reality. The evidence isn't just in the stars or in logic, it's in the transformation of human beings.
There's the story of the Valley of the Kwai, Ernest Gordon.
He was a POW in World War II, a Scottish officer, a skeptic. The prisoners in this Japanese camp were reduced to animals starving, stealing from each other, clawing for survival. It was hell on earth, pure survival of the fittest.
And they started reading the New Testament, just out of desperation.
They did, just reading it together. And Gordon watched as this group of dying, selfish men was transformed into a community of love. They started sacrificing for one another, caring for the sick. Men would give up their meager rations of food for a dying friend.
That goes against every evolutionary instinct we have.
It does. The survival of the fittest was replaced by self-sacrifice. That kind of profound moral reversal requires an explanation. It wasn't mass hysteria, it was redemption.
And then there's the story the graduate student mentioned in the notes.
This one really resonates with me. She was a philosophy student reading a dissertation on the cosmological argument, all the physics we discussed earlier about the beginning of the universe.
Okay.
And she was amazed by the science. She saw the logic. She realized, oh my gosh, there has to be a creator.
But it wasn't just an intellectual exercise for her.
No. She said that once the logic clicked, once that intellectual barrier was gone, she realized she had to deal with this God. The intellectual hurdles were actually just excuses to block a spiritual surrender she was afraid to make.
So what happened?
She accepted Christ, flushed her tranquilizers down the toilet, and found a joy she had never known.
That's the key, isn't it? The arguments disarmed the intellect so the heart could finally listen.
Exactly. Apologetics is clearing the debris from the past to the person of Jesus.
So let's wrap this up. We've built a cumulative case. We've woven the chainmail.
Let's look at the coat we've built.
Go for it.
1. The cosmological argument. The universe had a beginning, so it needs a necessary uncaused power.
2.
2. The teleological argument. The complexity and fine-tuning demand an intelligent designer.
3.
3. The moral argument. Our objective conscience requires a personal, good lawgiver.
And 4.
4. The ontological argument. Logic points us to a maximally great being.
And when you put them all together, you don't get a vague force, you get a profile.
A profile that looks exactly like the God of the Bible.
So for the listener, for the learner tuning in, knowing these proofs isn't about arrogance. It's not about owning the atheists online.
No, it's about confidence.
Yeah.
It's about disarming the obstacles to faith in your own mind first and then in others.
We aren't loving a fairy tale.
We are loving the architect of the universe. Just think about that.
Yeah.
The being who set the gravitational constant to a precision of 1 part in 10 to the 123rd power, who spun the galaxies, who wrote the moral law on your heart. He loved you enough to enter history. He loved you enough to become the ant, to save the colony.
That gives you, as 1 Peter 3.15 says, a reason to have tremendous confidence and boldness.
It does. It grounds your emotions in reality. When you feel doubt, and we all feel doubt, you can look at the stars, you can look at the complexity of life, and you can say, no, the evidence is there. My feelings fluctuate, but the facts remain.
Here's the final provocative thought for you to chew on. We spent this hour asking, does God exist? And the answer from philosophy, from science, from morality is a resounding yes. The evidence is overwhelming.
But if the universe requires a cause, and if morality requires a standard, and if the human heart implies a filler for that vacuum,
then the question changes. What happens when you stop asking, does God exist? And you start asking, what does this existing God want with me?
That is the question that changes everything.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
See you then.